Welcome to our second panel of the day. It's an agent panel. I'm Maddie Barber, Special Product Editor at TTG Media, and I'm joined today by Elaine Simpson, who is Premier Aussie Specialist at Travel Counsellors. We've also got Claire Moore, who's Managing Director at Peaks Travel Elite, and Karen Pocock, who's Director at Designer Travel. So thank you for joining me today, guys. It's lovely to have you. During this session, we're going to be covering bookings and inquiries trends. So that's what, who, when and why. We're going to be looking at some tips and marketing advice for holidays to Australia. Then we're going to be recommending some plans and strategies for selling Australia in 2021. And I'm also going to be asking my three panelists about what they've learnt from their personal experiences in Australia, because they've all been to Australia and know it very, very well. So if you do have any questions throughout the session for the panelists, feel free to type them in the chat and we will get to them as and when. So I'm going to start off with quite a broad question. I mean, I know we saw the green list was announced on Friday and Australia was on the list, but we've also heard reports that the borders won't be opening until potentially 2022. Kind of in terms of inquiries and bookings for Australia at the moment, are you seeing them, and have you noticed any changes in volume, in amount of inquiries and bookings in the recent months? Should I start? Elaine, should I come to you first?
Yeah, well, a lot of my clients are actually have family over there, so they're all straining at the bit, desperate to get back to see their grandchildren and so on. But I am also getting inquiries for more complicated trips to regions that in the past have been quite rare, like the Kimberley and Tasmania. So we're just waiting now until something can be booked.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire, have you seen any kind of changes in volume of bookings and inquiries for holidays to Australia?
It's still baby steps for us, really, at this stage. We did take a couple of nice bookings last week for Australia, which is always fab to see. And then we've got those people that are due to travel this summer. That's not necessarily, as we all know, looking quite as rosy. But of course, we're not quite in the position to book them really for the time that they want to be booking for next year. So we're kind of hanging on with some RCNs ready for these guys to take off, because like Elaine, lots of our people are those VFR tagging on, you know, a nice adventure onto some family visits.
Okay, great. And Karen, what about at Designer Travel? How are your bookings and inquiries looking at the moment?
Yeah, we've been working on some quite nice, almost bucket list type itineraries. So we've had some customers looking at Australia and New Zealand, combining the two, and we also have quite a lot of VFR traffic. So we've got customers who obviously couldn't travel last Christmas, were thinking about this year, and no doubt that looks likely it might get pushed back again to 2022. So I think once the opportunity arises, there'll be a huge rush to get those seats booked. People want to go, it's just a case of getting the green light to do so. Green light from both ends would be useful.
Yes, absolutely. And for the bookings inquiries that you are getting, or for the holidays that you've got booked already, what kinds of destinations and regions are they for? I mean, in terms of the different states and territories, is there one that's proving more popular than others, or is there kind of been a change in the most popular destination? I know in the previous session, Gold Medal said that Sydney has risen from being 30 to 40% of bookings to 60% of bookings. So I just wondered if you're seeing anything similar, any kind of new trends in which destinations clients are looking for. Claire, should we go?
Yeah, sure. For us, it's not necessarily a new trend, but more of an emerging trend, I suppose, is the Great Ocean Road region. That whole area around Melbourne and Adelaide it's been much more those itineraries really than the maybe rewind 10-15 years when it was Sydney Rock and Reef. So yeah, it's not necessarily, I don't think, related to COVID and to where we all are right now, but has definitely been emerging for us over the past few years.
Okay, great. And Karen?
We've actually seen Western Australia become more popular than it was before, and we've had some inquiries as well for Tasmania, so combining that, which is probably a bit different for us. And we do the traditional cities and the two centres, but lots of the big combination trips, so combining more than even Australia tagging on other places to go along the way. So some quite exciting stuff. And some of the TV programs like the Gang Train and the more unusual has prompted quite a lot of interest, which has been really quite nice. It's good for us to have things that are a bit more challenging and unusual too.
Okay, great. And Elaine, what about you?
Well, my experience is very much in line with Karen's. I'm getting inquiries for Western Australia. A lot of my VFR people are actually around the Perth area, but I'm also getting them and others wanting to go further north into the northwest, which is it was quite rare in the past, but that's something that's becoming more popular. And I think there's been a lot more travel coverage on the TV of the more remote regions anyway, so people are more aware of them.
Okay, great, thank you. And I mean, kind of one of my questions is when a customer is looking to travel. I know that's kind of the million-dollar question, but are you seeing that the inquiries that you're getting are for 2022 or kind of further afield? Are you getting any for 23 or 24? Who should I come to first?
Still got an awful lot of interest for 2022. So I'm planning a 3-month trip. So I'll, make that public now, then I've definitely got to go. I mean, I'm going away for a big trip that we've been planning for a long time. We've already put it back 1 year. And I think there will be a lot of people that have postponed, perhaps postponed again, and they'll be absolutely determined that 2022 is the year to do it. You can't put these things off, and I think people really will be keen. So we've had a bit of interest for 23 because they're big itineraries, but 22 in the main.
Mm-hmm. And Claire and Elaine, did you have anything to add on that, or it's similar trends again?
Exactly the same, really. Mainly 21, but there are people who are inquiring for further ahead than that.
Okay, great. And same for you, Claire, as well?
Yeah, for me, it's 22 at the moment. Some of the 23 stuff tends to be more based around a cruise departure as one of the kind of trains, planes and automobiles that we would bring into an itinerary. So, yeah, 22 and 23 for us.
Great. I wanted to ask next about kind of the duration that people are spending in Australia. I mean, I know it's a bucket list trip. If you're going over there, you're probably not going to be doing it for less than 2 weeks. But I wondered if you'd seen any changes in inquiries or bookings in terms of how long people are staying there. Is there any sign that people are wanting to spend longer because it's been so long since they've had a holiday? Yeah, just wondered if you'd seen anything along those lines. Elaine, should I come back to you?
It's a difficult one, that, because the people who've got the free time, yeah, they're going for longer, but so many people are tied to what leave allowance they have, so they can't extend it. So they're just taking as much time as they possibly can.
Claire?
A trip to Australia is never a 2-week thing anyway. So certainly if people are still working, then they've maxed out their annual leave anyway. Mm-hmm. But we have quite a big silver traveller market. So it might be a retirement trip, it might be a special occasion, or just because they can. Mm-hmm. And those trips all tend to be probably the golden moment for us is about a 5-week trip, I think. Too much longer than that, and then I think some people get a bit unsettled about being away for too long. But we do quite a lot for kind of 4.5, 5 weeks.
Okay, great. And Karen, what about designer travel? And have you seen any trends in duration changes?
Yeah, we're probably, I mean, people are pushing the durations that they're going for, but I suppose ours will primarily be sort of in that pre-retirement category. So you've probably got most people taking about 3 weeks, but we've been trying to push them to go longer. If you're going all that way, there's just so much to do. And as I say, they're combining it with other things too. So stopovers en route, stopovers on the way back. So adding a few extra days and maybe adding it into a holiday period, so Christmas or Easter, to try and make the most.
Okay, great. And in terms of the type of trip that people are taking, I mean, I know Australia is a huge road trip or touring destination. Kind of what trends are you seeing and what people are wanting right now? Are they still wanting touring, or are they wanting twin centres, multi-centres, single centres? What's kind of the outlook there from your point of view? I'll come to Karen first.
We've been doing more and more cruising, so lots of multi-centres, but people desperate to cruise as well. So we've been doing a bit of train, bit of cruise, bit of cars, car hire, motorhomes too. So we've been doing the whole combination. And the itineraries like the Great Ocean Road, the big itineraries, the big trips, seems to be really quite popular for us.
Claire?
Yeah, exactly the same. We for a good number of years now, we did lots and lots of tailor-made travel. So it's a massive variety of weird and wonderful things that are put together to make that itinerary. But over the past few years, we have seen much more of a trend to touring, and that's still with us. Not necessarily for the full duration. It's not, you know, an off the peg type trip, but maybe there's a short 7 day window for which would be touring. Otherwise, it does tend to be tailor-made, I think, because the options are endless, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine, what about you?
Yeah, very similar to Claire, that touring both under their own steam and on tours is very, very popular. And I'm finding a lot of demand for outback type of experiences, experiential travel really, where they're getting more learning as they travel along, you know. Yeah, that's becoming more popular. And I think that's a result of being locked up for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's going to be more demand for kind of outdoor experiences, fresh air, getting out and about in nature. Because we all know Australia is fantastic for that kind of trip. In terms of the type of clients that are inquiring about Australia, have you seen any changes there? Are you seeing more families, less families, kind of more retirees, fewer retirees? Yeah, I just wondered if anything has changed in who is wanting to travel to Australia at the moment. Karen, shall I come to you first?
I mean, we've been doing a few honeymoons out there, so I mean that's probably a bit of a change. I mean, we didn't used to do very many, but actually it's become more of a something that people have been inquiring about, and we're doing quite a lot for people taking the children out, either to see friends and family, and then do a proper add-on holiday, to not stay necessarily with family or friends for the whole duration. So there's a whole mixture of people wanting to sort of do some of the islands, barrier reefs and things like that. So there is a bit of a change actually in ages and profiles of people travelling.
Okay, interesting. Claire, are you seeing anything similar?
No change really for us, I don't think. I think we get a few families every year, but never any big numbers. Our numbers really tend to be old couples, and that's where we're seeing that this year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine, what about you?
Yeah, similar. Most of mine are getting on a little bit. I'm getting a few more people who have grown-up children. You know, the children are just leaving home or have just left home, so they're now taking holidays together where they couldn't do before. But other than that, it's not changing very much.
Okay, great. And in terms of budgets, I mean, Australia is obviously a big budget holiday for travellers from the UK. Have you seen any indication that people are wanting to spend more or less than they would on a Australia holiday pre-pandemic? Claire, shall I come to you first?
Sure. Well, I just think that we've all been cooped up for far too long, haven't we? And whilst there are people that are hugely financially worse off, I think our traditional market for Australia, those people have done well with their savings, they haven't travelled, and so now they're asking us about flight upgrades, they're asking us about accommodation upgrades, and trying to jam it full of as many experiences as possible. So yeah, that all costs money, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine, I see you're nodding there. Do you
Absolutely
agree?
the same. Absolutely the same. Yeah, the people who've been working through the pandemic have got extra money, and the ones who haven't been working don't have anything, so they're not going to be asking, are they?
Yeah, true. Karen, did you have anything to add on budget trends?
No, not really. I think it's probably about the same as the people have got. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the age range as to what budgets they're normally looking at, but it does vary a lot. So.
We've had a question come in from Beth. She's asking, what's your most popular stopover destination? Or are you finding the direct flight more popular? Elaine, shall I come to you?
And the good thing is it's now on the green list as well. So it can continue to be a popular stopover, whereas some of the other places may not be.
I think we missed your first few words there. Where did you say was most popular?
I'm sorry. Singapore, without a doubt, because it's now on the green list. So the stopover options are still there, whereas with some of the other places, they're not going to be there.
Right.
Or may not be there, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The direct flight, there's only the direct flight into Perth from Heathrow. So if you're in the north of England, as I am, it's going to be less of a choice for people.
Right,
It'll still be an option, though, of course.
Claire, what about you? What's your most popular stopover destination? Is it Singapore?
It is, yeah, hands down. I think a stopover in the east tends to be the trend. By a hands down, by a mile, it would be Singapore. And it's about, I guess, the holiday starting as soon as you're leaving home. So rather than have to, the journey is a bit arduous if we're in economy. So to try and break that up and have some fun on the way is I think, top of most people's list.
Karen, is your most popular stopover destination Singapore as well?
I hate to say it, but it's 3 in a row. Yep, Singapore.
Yeah, 3 in a row.
Really popular.
Well, if we got 3 saying the same thing, then it's definitely a trend, isn't it? It's consistency. Great. And in terms of just generally any other trends or changes in terms of how customers are inquiring about or booking trends to Australia, in terms of, I don't know, maybe they're doing more last minute bookings, more in advance bookings, maybe they're wanting more flexible cancellation or amendment policies. Have you seen any other kind of trends within the booking process? Karen, should I come to you first?
I think there's definitely a request now to try and see what flexibility you can get in booking conditions. People want to try and have the option to change or to cancel up to a certain agreed date. They want that flexibility, and I think that gives them a bit more security in terms of booking now rather than waiting until we get the green light at both ends to travel.
Oh, Claire, did you have anything to add?
No, just really to reiterate that, I think it's about choosing our tour operator partners carefully, making sure that we have got the backup and the flexibility that customers need to make our job easier and to make us look good at the end of the day, whilst the customer's being protected.
Yeah, absolutely. Elaine, what about you?
Nothing to add, really. It's just the same. It's the flexibility that people are looking for, and that's what we're seeking for them. So yeah, 3 in a row again.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now I want to move on to marketing and talk a bit about marketing. If you are promoting holidays for Australia right now, who are you targeting, and what kind of marketing strategies have you got in place? Your strategy might be, digital or print or not at all, or kind of taking a step back. What approach are you taking to marketing Australia at the moment, kind of this month and for the rest of the year? Claire, should I come to you first?
Yeah, sure. We don't have any huge plans at the moment. Our approach is definitely a kind of lights on approach. I feel quite strongly that we need not to alienate some customers by trying to push something that they're uncomfortable to book at the moment. I think it just switches people off. Although people could book, there's that kind of relative uncertainty. So we are in touch with our customers regularly. We will continue to put some really lovely, exciting itineraries and stuff like that on both digital. We haven't really got a print strategy at all at the moment. I've stepped back from all of that at the beginning of COVID and not reinstated anything. So really, we're in touch with our own database. We use digital and our window as well.
Okay, great. Elaine, how are you marketing Australia right now?
Mainly through social media. It's mainly putting reminders of what is happening in Australia, what you can do in Australia, and just reminding them about the opportunities that are there when we're allowed to travel again. And I'm getting some really good feedback from people by showing them things that are unique to Australia, that they can't get anywhere else. So the videos and so on from Tourism Australia helping, and some of the other specialist videos as well. I'm also e-marketing to my client base because the majority of them have either been to Australia or have an interest in Australia. And I'm putting together at the moment a newsletter which will go out as an e-marketing e-shot. And that I'll also print and send out to those that don't have email, because there are still some.
Yes, I'm sure there are.
Yeah, just reminding them that it's still there and it'll be there when they're ready.
Yeah, now's the time for dreaming, isn't it? Absolutely,
Yeah.
dreaming of Australia. Karen, what is Designer Travel doing with marketing Australia at the moment?
Well, we have a two-pronged approach. So we do a lot on social media. So we have offers that go out regularly on the main page, and the associates can share that, the home workers. And then we have a weekly newsletter. So if we can find something that's absolutely inspirational at that time, we'll put the itinerary in, and we usually feature probably 6 or 7 different options, including Australia, from time to time each week. And that keeps the sort of vibes alive for what we can sell and keeps the interest going. So.
And do you have any tips for agents who maybe haven't been marketing Australia that long, or maybe they're new to selling Australia, new to being a travel agent? Do you have any tips for them when it comes to marketing Australia? Karen, can I come back to you first?
Yeah, I think what I'd say is keep an eye on what's happening on the television, because actually some of the TV programmes, the stuff that really fire our imagination in the evenings and when we get some free time, if you see a programme actually linking an offer on social media, on a newsletter, it works, it really does. And actually you'll sometimes get inquiries for the particular holiday that you're advertising and actually get a booking from that. So that's a nice easy way, one to watch out for.
Great, thanks. And Elaine, do you have a top tip?
Not really, no. Just keep it in front of them. Keep inspiring people about what Australia has to offer, and it's not all about travel. You know, other things that are related to Australia. You know, tell them about films and about books that are all related to Australia, and about music, and people that they get a taste for it. And then hopefully when the doors open again, they'll be back to us.
Great. Claire, what about you? Do you have any tips for agents new to selling Australia?
Yeah, I think if you're new to selling Australia, you may actually not, it's overwhelming, I guess, because it's such a huge destination. There's such a variety of climate, of everything. So my suggestion would be certainly to become part of the Aussie Specialist Programme. If people haven't done that already, I think that's great. But also maybe try and focus on one area and become more of a specialist in that, so that you can kind of understand it and get to know it, and then you can grow beyond that. I think otherwise it just becomes a little bit diluted, so that you can speak with real confidence about a couple of key destinations rather than expecting maybe too much of yourself straight away.
Great, thank you. We've had a question come in from Mary saying, what, I guess in your opinion, would be the best outback itinerary? Elaine, you're looking a bit.
There are so many. I suppose it depends on what people's interests are, and the time of the year that they can travel. Flinders Ranges is a fantastic trip from Adelaide, and can be done in a relatively short time. Another brilliant one is right up the west coast from Perth up to Darwin, but that's very time critical. There's just so many. Outback, Broken Hill, brilliant place that few people go to, but it's got an awful lot to offer to anybody who's interested in the outback. Those are the spaces I love, the big open spaces.
Great, thank you. We've also had another one, a similar question about your opinion. What's your favourite place to add into an itinerary in Australia? Claire, shall I come to you for that one?
Yeah, sure. I always think it's really great after you've had your big adventure to build in some downtime, because of course we all get overexcited when we've got X amount of time off and we've got to fill our leave to the brink. But actually we have to remember that we're on holiday, try and remind our customers that they're on holiday. So actually to build in a couple of days downtime, maybe somewhere beautiful like Palm Cove, or you know, anywhere. For me, I do love to be by the seaside, but it doesn't have to be, you know, to build in one of the amazing kind of wilderness properties, just to give yourself some time and reflection time, I guess, to think about all the fabulous things you've seen.
Great. And Karen, did you have anything to add? Your favourite outback itinerary, your favourite place to add into an Australia itinerary?
I think people should really try and get to Tasmania. I think it's just the most wonderful place. I mean, if you love wildlife and you like adventure and you like scenery and you want to go back 30 years in time and see what it was like then, that's the place to head for. It's amazing. It's views and places to visit. It's like nothing else. It's worth the journey.
Absolutely. We've had a question come in from Richard. He says, as it's so far away for most Brits and would require a significant amount of time, do you find most people have sold themselves the country but need advice in building itineraries? Claire, you're nodding on that one. Shall I come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly what people come to us for some specialist advice, which is where, again, I come back to the Aussie Specialist Programme. It's just a great start for anybody. So to be able to kind of put some meats on the bones of an itinerary, or talk about, you know, there are some challenges. The weather is a challenge in certain places at certain times of the year. So actually, maybe people need to turn their itinerary on its head, or do it in a particular order to try and get the best out of
Okay, great. In terms of marketing and selling Australia over the past year and going forwards, how has your kind of approach and the way you approach it changed? Is there anything you can pull out that you're doing differently now that you would have been a year ago, or you plan to do differently in the coming months as travel starts to pick up again? We hope, fingers crossed. Elaine, shall I come to you first?
Yeah, I think people are going to want more. I'm going to be encouraging people to pay as much as possible for their flight seats, because the easier you can make the journey to get to Australia, the more enjoyable it's going to be. And I think people are worried now about travelling on aircraft and about changing. So it's going to be looking for the simplest ways and the most comfortable ways for people to do it, so that they can enjoy the whole experience and not just when they're there. What else? Also, I'll probably be doing more encouragement of my VFR people to actually get away from the family, or to go away and take the family with them while they're there. And I think there'll be more taste for that, rather than waiting until they get there, as they've tended to do in the past. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
And Claire, did you have anything to add on the way you're marketing and selling Australia in the past few months, and how you will?
So yeah, we will introduce. We've been doing virtual coffee mornings, but we have really shied away from doing anything destination focused, because of course we need to start marketing it about 3 or 4 weeks ahead, and of course there's so many changes. You know, is that the right destination to choose? Is it the wrong time? So we will be certainly doing destination versions, because I just think that's a great way to have people can come into the office now, but not everybody wants to, and it's not always at a time that suits. So a thing that we always make sure that we do is record them, so we can send those out to anybody who couldn't join at the time that's of the live event.
Okay, great. Karen, I'm going to ask you this question from Amanda, because you mentioned cruise earlier in Australia. Have you cruised around Australia to combine downtime and exploring yourself? So is that something you've experienced?
No, it's something we sell, but it's not something I've done. But I mean, I know a number of my colleagues are real cruise fanatics, and therefore would be more than happy to confidently talk about the cruising options. There are some adventure cruisings that you can do, and there's also the more traditional cruise lines that go out, which is what we tend to include within our itineraries.
Okay, Elaine and Claire, please do shout if you've combined a cruise yourself in Australia.
I've done a tall ships cruise in the Whitsundays. That was probably one of my favourite experiences in Australia, and I tend to try to include those in for anyone who's travelling up that coast. But that's the only one I've done there.
Okay, great. That leads us quite nicely into our section about personal experiences and your own holidays and fam trips that you've done in Australia. I know you have all been, but I'd like to hear a bit from you all, from each of you, about your experiences, whether they were fam trips, whether they were holidays, who did you travel with, when did you go, where did you go in Australia, because it's such a huge country. Yeah, just kind of tell me about your experiences. Karen, shall I come to you first?
Okay, so we've got friends in Tasmania, so that's the reason we ventured over there for the first time. We travelled quite extensively and spent quite a lot of time there. We've also done the Great Ocean Road, which was amazing. So we had friends in Adelaide and drove right the way across to Sydney and visited lots of places en route, and the Gold Coast as well. All mine have been holidays, so usually just 2 weeks though, so straight out and maybe a quick stop in Dubai on the way back. So just making the most of my time over there. I've loved it all. There's not anywhere that I wouldn't go back to, but Tasmania has a special place.
Amazing. And did you come back with any selling tips or kind of golden nuggets of information that you learned while you're over there that would be useful for agents who are selling Australia but haven't been themselves?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we did when we did the Great Ocean Road is we didn't plan it in advance. We picked the car up and stopped because my husband confidently thought he'd been before. That was the way you do it. And I think what it teaches you is actually it's much better to use a travel agent, do your research, get everything planned in advance, and you can really make the most of some fairly short times potentially that you're spending there. So I'd do your homework thoroughly. And where you're a travel agent and you've probably got colleagues around you, call on their expertise as well, because I think the training's great. But if you can get someone to provide you with that first-hand knowledge, there's nothing like it. Nothing compares, really.
Okay, great. And Claire, what about you? What about your adventures in Australia?
A long time since I've been to Australia, actually, but on my trips probably 15 years ago now, an absolutely brilliant trip. It was a fam trip. And we visited Perth and the Pinnacles and Fremantle and the kind of immediate vicinity, which was fab, onto Sydney. And then we travelled up to Cairns before joining the Coral Princess and did the little journey down to Townsville. So, yeah, absolutely stunning. My first experience and, all this time later, brilliant memories with me still.
Great. And did you come back with any selling tips that you think would be useful for agents today who I said before maybe haven't been to Australia but are selling it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the gift of experience, isn't it? To come back and having experienced it yourself. I think beyond that, it's kind of sell, isn't it? But I do think probably what we should all, this year particularly, I think we actually have a bit more of a challenge, or this year as we're putting together next year's itineraries even, for things like published fares and the huge amount of flexibility that we used to have when people used to maybe pay in full for a published fare. I'm not sure it's going to be quite as easy as that going forward. I'm confident we'll all find a way around it, but we may have to keep things a little bit more simple in some respects, just to make sure that we're able to fulfill those the financial flexibility that customers are after. So I think we need to be maybe a little bit mindful of that. Okay,
great. And Elaine, what about your experiences in Australia? Where have you been? What have you seen?
I've been lots and lots and lots of times. My first visit was in 1996 when I'd just started the Aussie Specialist course, and I thought I've got to go. So we went and we actually saw family and friends on that occasion and got married there. So the next time we went, I was determined I'd see every state and every territory. And I managed to do it in 5 weeks.
Wow.
I don't know how I managed to squeeze 5 weeks out of the business, but I did. And we started in Perth and did Rottnest, a day trip to Margaret River, and something. Oh, Swan River Wine Cruise. Then we went to the Red Centre, and did Uluru, camel to breakfast, walked Kings Canyon, ended up in Alice Springs, got the GAN down to Adelaide, went to the Barossa, flew to Tasmania, travelled by car from Hobart through Strahan, Cradle Mountain to Launceston, flew back to Melbourne, picked up a hire car, did Puffin Billy and the Yarra Valley, and then drove through the Snowy Mountains to Canberra, where we had family. So that was mainly family and friends. Then we went to Sydney with them, and again, it was family and friends, that bit, so there wasn't a lot of tourism stuff there. Then we went to Brisbane and did Tangalooma and Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary, and then flew home exhausted. So, and what I learned was, don't try to do so much. It's ridiculous, you know. It had to be done. I had to do it for my personal satisfaction. But what it taught me was not to try to put too much in anybody's itinerary. Do it as Claire said earlier. Remember, your clients are on holiday and they need downtime as well as activity time. And the other thing I've taken back from it was advice to others is definitely join the Aussie Specialist Programme. You learn so much, and it's the only way, really, you get the intensive knowledge that you need to sell Australia well. And you get a chance to go to Australia on a fam trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see Jules has commented here, says you can't underestimate the power of a fam trip. I did one to Australia in the 90s and got so many bookings off the back of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Selling from personal experiences, I've heard the best way to do it. Okay, so my next question is a bit of an opinion one. Do you think that Australia is a wise choice of destination for holidaymakers who are choosing their next break? Would you recommend it ahead of other destinations? Karen, shall I come to you?
Oh, I think it will be a really fantastic place to visit. They've done such a good job with COVID. They've been open in a lot of places as normal for the last, a good few months. So I think if you're going to go somewhere, you want somewhere nice and safe, secure to go to, where they're really taking everything very seriously. That's one of your places to head to. And if you've got bucket lists on your mind, then get it done now. Get it booked.
Yeah.
Okay. Elaine, do you agree?
I do agree, yeah. And something I'd like to say is that the great thing about Australia to me is that the mixture of familiarity, because we've got a shared European culture, so there's so much that is familiar, so you're comfortable, but there's so much that's completely off the wall and totally unique, and you can't see anywhere else. And it's that mixture of familiarity and unfamiliarity that I love about the place.
Great. Claire, do you have anything to add?
Not really. Just exactly the same as the ladies say. I just think there's so much variation within the country. How could there's got to be something to love for everybody. It is the country that has everything in bucket loads.
Great. And I'm just going to ask you to get your crystal balls out for my next question. Are you able to make any predictions about future travel to Australia in terms of what people might be wanting and what they're looking for in a holiday and where they're choosing to go? Claire, shall I come back to you first?
Well, that is a big question, isn't it? I think what I am sure of is that people want security. I hope that they'll continue to want to deal with human beings and actually to really bring an itinerary to life and to make suggestions and to challenge customers sometimes to things that they wouldn't have even considered. And as far as key destinations, I'm not so sure about that, but I feel really confident that people will be trying to broaden their horizons as far as brilliant experiences.
And Karen?
I'm not sure I can add very much more to that, really, to be very honest. So,
Elaine, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot more demand for personal contact with locals, and the I'm certainly going to be encouraging mine to take a guide, an Aboriginal guided tour wherever they are, because there's loads of them everywhere. Excuse me, everywhere now. And it really is a fantastic way of getting to know deep down the country, deep down, you know, what it's about. It's and I think there'll be a demand for it. I'm certainly seeing interest in the stuff I'm posting on social media.
Okay, great. And Elaine, I'm just going to stick with you for a question from Maurice here. He's asking for your best piece of advice to ensure that you don't overload an Australia itinerary.
Right. Minimum of 5 days for each place. Right. Don't spend more than 5 days for any individual place, and about every third day have a day off.
Great.
That's it.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the session. I'm just going to ask one last question, really simple, really broad. Is there anything else that you would like to share with other agents about marketing Australia, selling Australia, Australia as a holiday destination? Is there anything else you wanted to flag to our viewers and other agents today? Karen, should I come back to you?
I think most people have got Australia on their list of places they want to go to. So I don't think we should be bold about putting it forward as an option. And I know it's at the moment not an option for us to get into the country, but the fact that we've now got the green light to travel from here suggests that maybe in the near future we've got a really strong possibility of being able to start going over there. So be bold.
Great. Elaine?
I agree with every word Karen said. It's you just got to keep letting them know that it's there, because it will be there when we're allowed to travel.
Great. And Claire?
Yeah, exactly the same. It's just that keeping the lights on, isn't it? Keeping everything ticking over until we're all unleashed. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Elaine, Karen and Claire, for joining me and sharing your insight. It's been really interesting to hear about your own experiences and what you're selling and all your insight. And thank you everyone who's asked questions. I'm just going to wrap up now with a few closing remarks. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for tuning in to the first day of TTG Aussie Fest in association with Tourism Australia. I really do hope that you felt this afternoon's sessions have provided valuable market insights and given you plenty of food for thought to take away and utilise as you wish. Coming up next tomorrow, we have a masterclass and live Q&A on the Great Walks of Australia, followed by a masterclass and a live Q&A on the Great Golf Courses of Australia. Following that tomorrow, we have an Aboriginal painting workshop with Discover Aboriginal Experiences, which I think is a must-attend if you ask me. But even if you don't have a painting kit to get to work with, this session is going to be streamed live from Uluru, and you'll be able to hear some great stories about Australia's Aboriginal communities, which I know Elaine was incredibly excited to share information about today. But if you do have a painting set, even better, a talented artist will be talking you through how to put paintbrush to paper and create a piece of art that you are really proud of. In terms of prizes within TTG Aussie Fest, you can start getting your entries in tomorrow for Gold Medal's 2-week Australian Adventure giveaway, and that's by answering questions in the polls tab during the masterclasses. The spot prize from Tourism Australia tomorrow is a bottle of Aussie sparkling wine. So the 2 lucky attendees who answer the most questions correctly, again in the polls tab during the masterclasses, will win a bottle each. We're going to be announcing the winners of the bubbly the following day, so that's Wednesday at 9:25 a.m. in the welcome room before we begin the masterclasses. So make sure you tune in then to find out if one of them is you. We'll be announcing the winners of the spot prizes each day at 9:25 in that welcome. And if you haven't already, don't forget to visit the partner zones in the virtual lobby and check out their chat tab to find out what prizes are being offered there. We do now have a dedicated networking hour, TTG Aussie Fest networking hour. It's going to be running from 4 till 5 today. So please do make connections with each other and our event partners. If you go back into the virtual lobby and visit the partner zones, representatives from each company will be waiting there on camera to chat and answer any questions you might have for them. So please do have a look around and make new connections and ask any questions that you might have. But if you're not able to make the networking hour today, if you're not able to stick around, networking is still available throughout the entire week. So you can network with people whenever you want to, whenever's convenient for you. So I will now leave you to your networking and see you back here on an event at 9:25 a.m. for the second day of TTG Aussie Fest. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.